Longfellow once said that music is a universal language of mankind.
We drive alone.
So in this episode, I decided to sit down with Mafale, a man who's dedicated himself to that language. Mafale's a fixture in New York's folk music community, plays countless shows and festivals, and has his own studio.
I dream in colors of the desert earth, ochre and fire.
So join me as we discuss his bands, the technology explosion, and how musicians have fared during COVID. Welcome to No Pants During the Pandemic.
Hi, I'm Kevin Brooks, and welcome to a very special musical edition of No Pants During the Pandemic. Today I'm speaking with Mafale, guitarist, percussionist, singer, mixer, producer, and all-around nice guy. Hey Jay, how you doing, man?
Hello, Kevin. You know what? I'm doing great. I'm doing really good, especially getting this chance to for you and I to get to know each other once again after 25 years.
Thereabouts. A little background on us. We met, sadly, over 30 years ago at Hofstra University, where we both went. I was a TV film major, and Jay was a drama major and aspiring actor who was gracious and patient enough to perform in a few of my student productions.
I think the main word you're looking for is selfish enough, because the acting folks wanted to get as much on-screen time as possible, and the communication majors who needed talent for their projects would come and tap some of us to do it. So we were always signing up for those things. But it was super fun to do them.
I do apologize because generally the scripts and the acting were second to just actually getting the shows done. So yeah, it was just like, yeah, whatever you want to do. It's all good. I'm sorry 30 years later.
That was some of my best work.
They've gotten a little bit about you, but who are you? What do you do?
I am a musician and a mixing engineer. I work in two nationally touring groups, Catherine Miles and Mafale, and No Fuss and Feathers. And I'm an audio mixing engineer here at the Wind Up Shop, my recording studio.
In college, you were an actor, and after college, you did a little bit of acting and some stand-up comedy. How did you move away from that and basically kind of go all in on music?
When I was in college, I met my first roommate, Jason Caputo, is still an amazing guitar player, but at that time he was like a guitar hero to me. And I had only just met him, and he started teaching me how to play a little bit. And then fast forward a few years after college, I realized that actors didn't get paid and musicians did. So it was a slow evolution. I still love the art of acting. I'm not doing it now. I was doing it for a long time and realized that in addition to performing in theater or in front of whatever cameras were pointed at me, that you could put together your own sort of musical evening and bring that into a coffee shop or a pub or something and just play music that night. And you would leave that night with money in your pocket. And I thought, this is a way to perform and make somewhat of a living at it. So I had all of that experience on stage. I had all of that training. I had all of the stuff that goes along with that. I didn't have the most talent at playing guitar, especially early on. But that came with practice and experience. It was just sort of an evolution from moving slowly. It wasn't like a switch got flipped. I just kind of slowly moved, did less and less performing as an actor and more performing as a musician.
Were there any, I guess, moments while, in your early musical career, where you're just like, all right, cool, I've made the right decision?
Yes, I married my musical partner. So that's when I knew I made the perfect decision. My musical partner, Catherine Miles, who I met when we were both acting, both kind of made that transition together from acting into music.
I'm a girl who has two brothers. They're both older than me.
And at the time, our really good buddy, Paul Silverman, who was an incredibly talented piano player, the three of us just were playing music for fun, and that turned into a group that we called the YaYas.
Gotta stop counting up the cost. Can't live my life in terms of what I've lost.
We played together for, I want to say 10 years. As that all kind of transitioned together, one of my very best friends in the world came from that, working in music in that group. Obviously, my wife came from working in music in that group. So I knew almost instantly that I had made the right decision.
Nothing going down.
Paul from the YaYas is to this day one of our very dearest friends. He just decided to not pursue music the same way that we were pursuing it. And in fact, from time to time, Paul does still play with us.
And after the YaYas, you and Catherine went on to form Miles and Mafale. So what's the dynamic between the two of you when you perform?
Catherine is this incredible songwriter with an even more incredible voice. And I'm the guy who stands next to her playing guitar.
Dear old friend and I had plans to meet, lunch to eat at the food truck, our favorite food truck, on Taco Tuesday, Tasty Tuesday, la la la.
We have a lot of fun on stage.
La la la.
We work really hard at writing the best songs that we can. And when I say we write, I'm going to say that, Catherine probably is like 90% of the writing and I'm 10%. But without that 10%, there's no songs. But that aside, we write the best possible songs that we can, and we present them on stage. And some of them will hopefully make you laugh. Some of them will hopefully make you weep. But we try to inject whatever we can in between those songs to just be like a reason that you're glad you left your home that night and went out to go see a show.
March, what kind of name is that for a girl?
You can listen to some, hopefully, what you think is enjoyable music, the more serious, heavy stuff, the lighter, more fun stuff, and then just see people on stage. We love playing together. We we so much enjoy each other's company. And what you see on stage is sort of an amplified version of ourselves.
Gotta keep moving, gotta keep moving.
We're not putting on an act. We don't do anything on stage that's scripted. We've described it as inviting the audiences into our living room to some extent. That's just how we behave on stage. People will call things out and talk to us while we're on stage, and we will talk back to them and just involve them in the show. That's kind of what we do.
That's great. Well, one article described your songs as kind of like a slice of life, but I mean, you do kind of you're telling stories, which is something that's kind of been, I think, lost in a lot of songs these days. And I guess that's part and parcel to the singer-songwriter thing. Is there like a theme, or is there something you guys like to, talk about in your music?
What you'll notice is we don't tend to write a lot of love songs.
2, 3, 4. I've got a soapbox. I will put on a show.
A lot of the songs are character driven, so you'll see bits and pieces of people with their family or with their friends or pet, something like that. Those are the things that we tend to write about.
It's a skill I have honed, years of patience and practice.
Catherine has this amazing narrative way that she writes. She's constantly writing. And when we sit down to write together, she's got, just these books and books of notes that she's made and scraps of paper and things like that. It's pretty incredible to watch some of that stuff come together. And she's coming up with the melodies. I mean, rarely do I have any influence on how a melody is going to change. Maybe a little thing here or there, but really, that's what I mean when I say 90% of it's hers. And then there's just this sort of foundational thing that I'm providing in the songwriting. Maybe it gets it started, maybe it gets it finished, but most of it I will easily give 90% of the credit to Catherine on our songwriting. Except for when we start cashing checks. So then those are 50.
That's 50-50, yes. So what type of music would you categorize your work as?
I tend to lean toward the singer-songwriter label because people like labels as to what we do. I don't love the term folk music, which is probably a little bit more appropriate for what we do, because I think that people who aren't in the folk music scene have a preconceived notion when they hear the term folk music.
They're thinking of the ladies from Magic Garden?
It's a bit outdated. Let's say it's a bit outdated, right? So yes, that was folk music, but folk music is also something today. And it's not necessarily what it was in the mid to late 60s, early 70s, which is also great stuff too. Obviously nothing against that. It's just not really what we do.
You guys have done quite a bit of touring and have played a bunch of storied venues, famous places with a lot of history.
Well, this is fun. You've basically given me a platform where I could just brag for about an hour, and that's really nice of you.
That's the whole point.
To answer your question more directly, we have had the great fortune to play at some amazing places. We have played the Falcon Ridge Folk Festival, the Kerrville Folk Festival. We've played some of the storied places that you were talking about, of course, New York City, the Bitter End, the Living Room. You and I were talking off air earlier about the Town Crier in New York. Phil Seganer, the owner of the Town Crier, has been so nice to us over the years, as he is with a lot of musicians, gives us opportunities to be heard at his venue, which is just legendary, which is great. What I like to share with people that not a lot of folks necessarily know about if you're not part of the scene is that a lot of what we do when we tour, a lot of the places that we play are house concerts and coffee house series. House concerts are a lot like they sound. Somebody will essentially open up their home. They'll put out 20 or 30, 70 folding chairs or what have you, depending on the size of their home. And they will host a sort of a monthly night of a potluck dinner and have people come into their homes for a donation for the musicians. And musicians will tour the country from house concert to house concert. For folks who travel, with a guitar or a duo or a trio that travels with a guitar or a keyboard or something, these are amazing audiences who sit quietly for a concert and listen. It's so perfect for the type of shows that we perform. And it's a huge honor to play those. And something just like those, except a little bit bigger, are these coffee house series. And these are similar to the folk scene back in the 60s, where essentially somebody would sort of rent out a space, either the basement of a church or a meeting room in a library or something like that. And they set up this mini venue to have a music concert. These are different, again, than sort of a bar where there's a lot of talking and yelling and music and stuff going on all at the same time. These are sit-down concerts for people to kind of listen to the performer, and you get shushed by the other patrons if you're talking during the concert.
It's a little surreal, but it seems just so cool because it reminds me, when you read about like the salons in the 19th century, it's like, I love this band. I'm bringing this band to my house. You come and see this band, and then we can talk about them.
That's exactly what it's like. I've played house concerts in New York City apartments. I've played house concerts in someone's huge finished basement where there were probably 80 or 85 people packed into that basement and everything in between. It's incredible. There's huge potluck dinners that people bring. And you do like a set of music, and then everybody takes a break, and then we move on to all the desserts and the coffee that's put out, and then you do another set of music after that. It's incredible fun. The musicians just hang out with the folks that are there to listen to, like during the break. It's an opportunity for us to sign autographs and hopefully sell CDs and other merchandise. But also we just answer questions and hang around and talk to people and time to go back on stage. And then we go back up and play music. And that really plays into our style of stuff, which is that, remember when I said we sort of invite you into our living room and it's very interactive with the audience? It's just like that, except for those house concerts, we're actually in somebody else's living room.
Throw your hands up and yeah, hey.
Hey! And I hear you and Catherine have a new album coming out.
We've been working on this album now for a long time.
There's a hole in the wall right behind the dresser. There's a hole in the wall beneath the kitchen sink.
We're super proud of the songs. These are the best songs we've written. It's absolutely going to be the best sounding record we've ever made.
This is the house that I was born in, the house where I was
songs that if you've come to our shows, you've probably heard most of them. There'll be a couple of surprises for you. These arrangements are obviously radio-ready arrangements, so it's a different kind of view. One of the songs that we finished up most recently is a song that we wrote several years ago, and it never quite found its home.
An old woman in her garden stares at hands covered with dirt.
And we've rewritten it and rearranged it and rewritten it. There's a big change to it. It ended up being a bigger change than just a little adjustment. The entire chorus is different. You know, we already had the music already recorded in the can. Thankfully, the change to the lyrics and the melody of the chorus did not require a re-recording of the whole song.
Oh, right now, this is happy.
We would have done it if it required it, but it fit in place with where it was. So we did re-record Catherine's vocals for this song, and we're really glad that we did, because the change is just something that we're like, oh, that's how this song goes.
So are there any influences that show up in your music?
Musically, the stuff that I listen to and try to bring into what we do is so different than the typical singer-songwriter stuff. I try to emulate stuff that I grew up listening to. I try to emulate stuff that I'm a fan of. And that's bubblegum pop rock from the 80s, Tower Power funk music, if I can ever inject any of that stuff into our music. Just things that are so far outside of the usual singer-songwriter fare that it shouldn't make any sense in there. I guess if you were looking for Jay's influences, it's typically not from the folk background. And maybe that's what makes, that contributes to our music being a little bit off-center.
Can you give me an example?
There's a song on the record called Rubber Band, and it's one of these numbers where we tried it one way for a while and we liked it, and then we tried it a different way and we were like, oh, okay.
Suddenly, the room fell silent.
So I was approaching the music of this song as sort of almost a Henry Mancini type thing. For those of you who don't recognize the name, he wrote the theme to Peter Gunn, Pink Panther. So just sort of this mod kind of sound. And Kath, at one point, said to me, I was thinking it was more like a Suzanne Vega song. And I went, oh, I didn't know that. So then we just sort of married together this Henry Mancini meets Suzanne Vega sort of arrangement of this song.
Time slowed to crawl if it moved at all while we watched that flight.
I'm real excited about putting that on this record.
And you aren't afraid to get a little political, like on your track Stronger Than That.
I think just about every song on this record has at least some political underpinnings.
So I turned on blah blah point blah FM the other day.
So Stronger definitely was born of some of our views on politics. There's so much us versus them in the world right now. That song just kind of tried to remind folks how much stronger we are when we're not fighting each other.
It was us against them and them against us with no compromise, no meeting of the minds.
You just said that almost all the songs on the new album have political undertones. Why is that so prominent in folk music?
I can only answer why it plays well for us, and that is just if we're going to write music, it has to be about something that is important to us, something meaningful.
I will tell them what they want to hear, confirm all their fears.
In the last several years, this is a subject that has been important to us. You won't find anything that's, hopefully, that feels like anyone is preaching to you, because that's not really how we feel about things. What we try to do is illustrate perhaps a story for you. And also, if we're going to lean toward anything, we lean toward we have choices in the world. And when you choose to be hopeful, or when you choose to be kind, or something along those lines, that's the thing that we'll encourage, right? Choose to be hopeful, choose to be positive, choose to
be nice.
Can we just be nice? Why can't anybody just be nice to each other anymore? That's exactly right.
We can be stronger than that. We can be sticks bundled together with ties that can't be severed no matter what the weather.
If we can put music out there that helps display why that's a wonderful thing, or if our music is sort of a thank you to people who are making those kind choices.
People take a look around.
I will take that any day.
You guys have been really active in the folk scene. And out of that, another musical project was born.
Sitting on a subway on a sunny afternoon.
Once again, you're performing with Catherine, but this time, Karen Oliver and Carol Ann Solobello have been added to the mix. How did No Fuss and Feathers come about?
The No Fuss and Feathers project actually was born out of another project. There is a group of women who call themselves Chicks with Dip. It is a collective of women singer-songwriters who support each other. Pre-COVID, they would get together on a monthly or maybe every few months, get together, have dinner, talk about songwriting, talk about not songwriting. I'm not allowed in on the meetings, so I wish I could tell you more about it. But essentially, it's a group of people, these fantastic artists who are just support each other in every way.
How much time do you have?
The group decided to help one of those coffee house series in New York City. They wanted to hold a fundraiser and help build up the bank for this coffee house. So somebody in the group suggested a special concert where they all play together. They did an evening where everyone in the group played a song from Joni Mitchell's Blue album. That was the first half of the show. And then the second half of the show, the songwriters would one at a time go up and play one of their own songs. They did the show and it was fantastic. The audience would come up to us afterward and talk about how amazed they were at that second half. They came for the Blue music and then they stayed for the second half, and they loved that just as much because they had no idea that this kind of music was out there. There was another venue in the audience that night who asked, hey, why don't you do this at our place? And that kind of snowballed from there into a 2.5-year on and off tour. Throughout the tour of that show, Catherine and myself found ourselves on stage with Karen Oliver and Carol Ann Solobello a lot. That just sort of evolved to the four of us would collaborate together on a song in that second half.
Da, 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 da.
We really just seemed to gel. There's a chemistry there with the four of us. So when that show stopped touring, the four of us decided we didn't want to stop playing together. And that's where No Fuss and Feathers came from.
Obviously, besides there being 4 people in the group, how does No Fuss and Feathers differ from Miles and Mafale?
Our shows began as sort of a songwriter in the round, where Karen would play a song, Carol Ann would play a song, Catherine and I would play a song, and then we go back to Karen and Carol Ann and Catherine.
I'm gonna paint my wagon honey crimson and red. It's got a white wall tires and a long flat bed.
As any musician who participates in song circles will tell you, it's too difficult to keep your hands off of each other's music. So then we would start sort of sitting in and singing along or playing along with each other's songs until it became a full-blown, everyone's playing on every song. And the thing that sort of changes is who's singing lead. And we've got 3 amazing lead singers who also happen to be 3 amazing harmony singers. So if you like harmony, to hear the vibration between Catherine, Carol Ann, and Karen's voices singing together, it's something to be heard for sure.
Moon rises, stew is growing hot.
The harmonies are fantastic, and the mix of these 3 distinct voices and acts reminds me of Cry, Cry, Cry.
To be mentioned in the same sentence as Cry, Cry, Cry is amazing. Thank you.
Sadly, you and I are probably 2 out of about 5 people watching this who know who Cry, Cry, Cry actually is.
What's great about that is that now more people will know about it because
Correct.
we have said it to all of you.
I did get a good chuckle when I was reading a description of No Fuss and Feathers. They called you guys 3 talented singer-songwriter gals and 1 relaxed guy. I laughed out loud. I LOL'd, as the kids say.
I dream in colors of the desert earth.
With this group, like Miles and Mafale, you take a step into the background and let the singers do their thing.
I've always found it important to know what your superpowers are. This is something that I would think about as a kid, and I've sort of remembered it as an adult. I've always wanted to know, what's my superpower? And it turns out that my superpower is not singing lead vocals or glaringly loud guitar solos. My superpower is providing something that somebody needs to elevate the whole thing. In my acting days, I remembered being never really cast as the lead in something, but always like the lead's best friend, right? Give me a great supporting role anytime, and that's what I gravitate toward. So whether it is playing guitar for Catherine's voice, there's a lot more going on than the average person would necessarily notice, and that's good. You shouldn't notice me as much. I try to play the same role in No Fuss. It's not my role to sing as loud as I can and take the lead on one of those songs, because what I'm doing by playing my cajon, which is that box drum that I play, or shakers, or any combination of those things, and guitar, is whatever's happening with those vocalists, I'm just filling the role of the thing that would serve whatever else is happening. I don't need to be that center of attention.
It's really hard to be an introverted extrovert, isn't it?
Well said.
That introverted side of yours has taken a step forward. You run a studio on Long Island called The Wind-Up Shop.
The Wind-Up Shop is a recording studio in my home. I say recording studio because that sounds familiar to most folks. What I mostly do in my work is mixing.
I'm gonna run these miles for you, lift these weights for you.
The easiest way I can describe that is when a musician records music for a single or an album, they usually have several tracks of audio. There's somebody singing, there's somebody playing guitar, there's somebody playing the keyboard, there's a drummer, there's a bass player, there's harmonies, all these elements that come together. So what a mix engineer does is take all of those tracks and assembles them together into a radio-ready mix of a song.
What's your favorite part about stepping out of the spotlight even more and helping put together these recordings with different artists?
It makes me feel sort of like a sculptor. I've been provided with this beautiful piece of marble, and I can keep sort of just kind of scraping away at certain things and putting together something where hopefully, we end up with this beautiful statue that we've made together collaboratively.
I wanna be a home run hitter.
There's a lot of effort that goes into creating a record, and I like getting to be the fresh ears. In other words, you've got a lot of folks who've worked a long time on something, and then they hand it over to me, and it's possible I've never heard any of it before. And so my approach to helping them put this together is totally fresh from what they've gone through writing, and rehearsing, and performing, and recording.
What have been some of your, favorite projects to work on?
There is a songwriter named Meg Braun, whose record I just mixed.
Oh, cradle moon, shine down on my baby tonight.
She recorded everything in Nashville. Sally Barris produced it with Meg, and she had this wonderful army of incredible musicians playing on the record with her. I've known Meg for years. She's one of those women who's in the Chicks with Dip organization.
Cradle moon, run far away from my baby tonight.
It was super fun to be able to mix tracks by this incredible group of musicians from Nashville and from other parts of the country as well.
What was your favorite track to work on?
I told you a minute ago about my love of finding superpowers. What's my superpower? Well, maybe I didn't write these songs, or maybe I don't have the superpower of being an amazing trumpet player. But what I can do is listen to these tracks and make decisions creatively, arrangement-wise, that maybe the person who wrote and performed the song never thought about.
Crack and break.
There's a song called Crack and Break.
Cannot wait.
I think the whole track is just a guitar and a piano and Meg's voice. Very stripped down, very simple, beautiful sounding song. And sometimes less is more. There's a point in the song where I just decided, let's pull that guitar out.
There is no choice but to be brave when you have yourself to save.
By just plucking out the guitar part just for a moment, it sounds even more lonely than the song was as it was playing before. Having the autonomy to make those kinds of decisions when I'm helping someone with their record is really interesting to me. Similarly, Meg Braun has a song called When It All Falls Apart, where sort of the opposite was true. More is more.
If you're living your life, do it all to get your fill.
Sometimes what we want to do is, as the song is moving through, you want it to sort of build and build and build. And this song needed a little bit extra at the end. So I found ways to add more voices, more of Meg. Meg had sung a bunch of different parts throughout the song.
You're not alone, hold.
And I did some copying and pasting and collecting and added some extra echoes of certain things. And by the end of the song, there's a whole bunch of Meg Braun's singing to you.
And you'll get back up. Reach out your hand. Yes, you will. Yes, you will. Hold on and you will. Let your spirit.
There is a method that I love to use, and artists who have worked with me will recognize this, where as a song is coming toward the end and you kind of want that last chorus to be really big, but there doesn't seem to be anything else happening, sonically, musically. There's no more instruments to add at the end, or there's nothing else to add. There is something to be said for taking what happens right before that big last chorus and bringing that down, stripping it back, pulling out some elements so that you can bring them back in for that last chorus. The impact that creates from, that juxtaposition from the quieter, more stripped down moment back into that big chorus, it has such a great effect. There was one other song that was interesting as a mixer to work on Meg's record called Gasoline. I actually remember when Meg was writing this song, she said something to the effect of she said, I don't even know if this is a song. I just started singing words and phrases and things. I don't really know. It starts and then it goes and then it ends, and I'm not sure what to do with this song.
Soda pop, candy shop, hip hop bop, I can't stop.
As I was working with the song, what can I bring to this, to help craft it and form it into something that feels more song-like? And we did basically some sound design at the beginning of the song to sort of set a scene and a mood. There's all this cacophony of noise that's happening that brings us into the song, which is about trying to shut out the noise.
I just want the noise to go away, 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 away.
For a singer-songwriter folk kind of record out of Nashville, we had a lot of fun playing with a lot of different sound elements and things like that in that song. And I was glad that Meg and Sally were into it. When I played them the first draft of it, I think Meg actually said something like, give me a day, I have to get used to this because it's very different. And then she came back around the next day and she was like, love it, let's keep it.
As a producer and a mixer, when you have a client come in, especially a new client, what type of advice do you give them? I always remember watching these documentaries on how an album was made, and you hear these horror stories about amazing acts that would come into the studio woefully unprepared.
I'll tell you what, don't pay a recording engineer to listen to you practice. All right, that's kind of along the lines of what you were just talking about. If you're ready to record a record, you should, by all means, practice, know it inside and out. Here's something that people don't often even think about, which is you can practice recording also. Basically, if you have a smartphone, you could at least practice recording yourself even on the smartphone. You may be an incredible musician, a wonderful performer, but if you don't record often, that is an entirely different skill set that maybe you just don't have a lot of experience with. You may even find that you like recording yourself and that's your preferred method of making a record.
He is talking, complaints about his day.
Let's just jump off of what you were pretty much just talking about for a second. First, you had the advent of Pro Tools. I guess that was in the late 90s. But then, since then, apps like GarageBand, and I'm sure there's, hundreds of others, that just aren't as well known. That's allowed performers to more or less take control of their recording process a little bit better. As a performer, what does that mean, to you?
My decision to get into recording was twofold. And both of those folds go back to the same thing, which is finances. I had a few experiences recording in studios, nice studios, good people, but it's expensive for something that you're just renting.
Where do you go, Superman? Just when I need you, held the world in your hand.
Also, I've always had an interest in how this stuff works and how this sausage is made. When I was a kid, I would use my dad's cassette recorder and I would, record bits and pieces of things, and I was trying to figure out how to edit stuff basically live by hitting, stop and record again. If you're going to spend $100 an hour, $150 an hour in somebody's recording studio, you could take a few hours worth of that money that you're going to spend and buy what you need to do it yourself at home. Not everybody has the skill set to do this, or the patience, or the desire to do it. It's not for everybody. But if you're interested in it, you could invest very minimal money and try it out and see if it works for you. And if it does, it takes you on a new path.
What you're doing with Wind Up is actually very similar to what I did as an editor for years. You're a technician. You've got the engineering side, the more technical side, but at the same time, you've got this artistic side, and you're trying to make something pretty, for me visually, for you audibly. I think it made my brain happy, my left side and my right side.
It's a total melding of left brain and right brain. You've got, all the science that goes behind the technology, and you've got the artistic decisions that get made. And then in the middle, there's the craft and the technique and things like that, and the focus and concentration those things take. Maybe one of the reasons I'm drawn to the mixing part too is similar to my onstage persona. What can I do with this stuff that you've done to elevate what you're doing? It's okay that people leave the show and remember, the voices more than they remember the bald guy standing on the side. And it's okay that people listen to music and don't even think, I think I'm probably doing my job best when nobody is thinking about, well, I wonder who mixed this record.
I just asked that question as a musician, but how is it as a mixer for the artist to take more control of their out production? I assume it's cool in some ways, but frustrating in others. And I guess it raises the question, does it lessen the value of what you do?
There's a danger in how accessible this technology is, only in that now everybody can do it, right? So the great thing about the invention of the MP3 is that anybody can put out a record, and home recording stuff is that anybody can then put out music and do it. And then the danger with all of that is that anybody can put out a record. It's a double-edged sword. But that can probably be said about a ton of things. I like to focus on the positive as much as I can. This is the way the world is going. Technology is going to do what it does. We can fight it or we can get on board. If you're able to create, it's amazing. If you're able to create without having to spend a ton of money, it's even more incredible as an artist, because artists are notoriously not filled with lots of money.
Are there any pitfalls with musicians getting caught up in all this technology?
A big pitfall that folks stumble into is usually nothing to do with the technology. It has to do with the room that they're recording audio in.
In a cab through this town.
You don't want to hear the room. We call it hearing the room. I don't want to hear the room in your recording, and that typically just has to do with a lot of reflection. The only thing you need to know about to solve that issue is just put a lot of soft stuff in the room, and that will help the issue. You could get very technical and you can spend a lot of money, but you typically don't need to. A big thick couch go to the room that's got a rug and the big thick couch. That's a good thing. You don't have to spend a bunch of money on this foam when you're starting out. If you've got big heavy blankets you can hang around the area, you just want to stop sound from bouncing around the walls and the ceiling and off glass windows and mirrors and things like that. Anything hard and reflective makes a little bit of an echo that gets back into your mic.
got any advice for those musicians recording at home?
You know that I always like circling back to these superpowers I keep talking about, right? So know what your superpower is and what it isn't. And if you're not ready to mix something and you're going to record some tracks at home and send it to somebody to mix, I would stay away from those effects, stay away from those plugins. They're super fun, experiment with them, but your mix engineer will have a very difficult time undoing any reverb or delays and things like that you put onto your tracks. Same with compression and EQ.
I have a little boat there. She is round and she is tight.
Just get as good a sound as you possibly can, just a raw track, and leave all of those fun effects and things to the mixing person. But what you should do is ask them how they did it, and you can certainly tinker around with it on your own, and that's how you learn how to use them, for sure. Get advice.
So is there a downside to the accessibility of this technology?
There's always a side effect of these things, right? These big, beautiful studios are closing because the technology and the way the world is changing is sort of closing a chapter on those things. And that's not a great thing for those folks that make their living on that and put their lives into that, obviously. But there's this cycle that's happening now of musicians being able to do the types of things that they're doing. My bandmate, Carol Ann Solabello, she has a little bit of a knack for this stuff, right? She's had some interest in this. She's an incredible songwriter, and she's now starting to do some stuff at home.
Bring me your tired, bring me your poor, bring me your bruised, you're invisible, and you're ignored.
I mixed a song for Carol Ann earlier this year that she recorded at home in her own little home studio setup. She's got a nice sounding, simple mic. She's learned how to use it well. I'm always available to my friends who kind of want to nerd out about gear and technique and all that, because it doesn't take a lot of expensive gear. It takes a lot of good technique. I keep pointing back to this record because Carol Ann's record came out great. She recorded her voice. She recorded her guitar. She played bass on it. She had her son play keyboard on it. She had other women songwriter friends from Chicks with Dip record harmony vocals and parts at home. I recorded Catherine's voice here.
I am still here, and I am waiting.
And we mixed the whole thing together. And I mean, during sort of the lockdown of the COVID-19 pandemic, to be able to work with 15 or so other musician collaborators around the country and have it all sort of come together in one place and then put it back out into the world as finished music over the internet, it's incredible. By the way, the song that she did is called Lady in Waiting, and it's just gorgeous. And if you're not familiar with it, you should check it out.
That brings me to what's been going on for the last year, the pandemic. As a musician, you've been greatly affected because you can't go out and play. There's no concerts. So how do you and any musician get through this?
I'm fortunate that I have, the studio end of things, which is sort of a remote world for me to begin with. So that's pretty lucky.
My heart is tired, but I can't sleep.
I'll tell you what, there are a lot of my musician friends who have transitioned from playing live to live streaming.
Hurtling by just as I arrive.
Again, the technology that, it just so happens that this has happened to us in the age of technological advancements that we have right now.
I draw close to your fire.
It's incredible to see these live streaming shows where if you've got a laptop and an internet connection, you could put your own little TV show out on social media, and folks can click a button and contribute money directly into your bank account while you perform music without leaving your house.
And when they try to dim your light.
There's a lot of pain out there for any type of performer who performs live. Theaters obviously are taking such a huge hit. But if you're able to take advantage of that technology and that works well for what you do, it's just been it's been incredible to watch some of my friends do this. It's wonderful.
It's nice to be here with you tonight.
Do you think the phenomena of live streaming will continue after the pandemic's over?
Have a name for girls like me.
I don't think that the live streaming thing is going to go away after the pandemic. That toothpaste is out of the tube, and I think that there's going to be touring, and there's going to be a lot more streaming than we've ever seen before, because touring musicians, maybe they'll get a great lineup of a Thursday, a Friday, and a Saturday show, but they've got something hanging out there on Wednesday that's going to be good for them. But what do they do on Sunday and Monday or something? They could sit in a hotel room and do a live streaming show in between touring shows to kind of fill that night.
And how is it affecting you at the wind-up shop?
What's happening a lot during the pandemic is that musicians who would ordinarily go out and tour more haven't been able to. And they spend some of that time now hunkering down and writing new songs and recording new records. Or, what can I do? I can't go tour. I'm going to take the time now to work on some writing projects, to take the time to work on some recording projects.
About half of us got lost driving.
Do your clients basically just send you tracks now?
It's sort of more out in the open now, but that is, in a lot of ways, how records have been made in recent years anyway.
Everyone had something good to say.
They're sending some tracks over to their friend who plays bass, and that friend is sending back bass tracks so that they can be incorporated into their record. And they take, their friend who's recording drums in Chicago and add them into the mix, and then they send this thing to me here in New York, and I mix it for them. Of course, there are the music videos that we're all getting used to seeing now with everybody in a box on screen, because these parts were recorded individually and then placed together, on screen in video format and in your ears as a finished mix.
Very nice segue, thanks. You actually got the opportunity to mix 2 of these videos and work with one of your oldest friends, Adam Seeley, in the process.
He and his wife, Kristen, decided, it was really early on. I'd like to say that, we didn't invent this thing, but Adam and Kristen were one of the first people to think to put together this kind of a video that I knew of. It had to have been right at the beginning of March. Live performing shut down quickly with very little warning. And so they wanted to figure out, is there something that we can do to lift the spirits of a bunch of our musician friends, have a fun creative project to do, something to fill that creative void that we all are feeling instantly? And then maybe that's sort of a gift to the audiences that have supported us for years but can't come out and listen to live music now. What can we do? They decided they wanted to do not just something like We Are the World, they wanted to cover We Are the World, and they were going to reach out to 70 or 80 of their closest friends to contribute little elements.
And how did you get involved?
The phone call that I got from Adam was, hey, would you want to mix this? You're probably just going to have to, edit together some voices and put a little reverb on it. It'll be easy for you. Which, of course, is absolutely not at all what happened.
I'm twitching at the thought of having over 70 individual voices in that timeline. It's pretty big, even if you could just pop them right in and they'd match up, which I'm assuming they didn't.
No.
We are the world. We are the children.
I think we're done.
And what did you do for a background track?
There was a track that everyone was singing to, and early this was supposed to be just a lark of a little project, and then we decided not to use that track. It was actually not a track that we had the rights to at all. It was something you could lift off of YouTube. It's the original music with very few of the voices on it. We had decided we've got to re-record the music. We can't use the original backing tracks of this. I'm sure somehow we're going to get into trouble if we do that.
Oh, yes.
So then we took the backing track that we had and sent that to folks who weren't singers, but bass player, keyboard player, drummer, horns, and everybody recorded along to that original recording. They were playing along to it, basically, and then we pulled out the original recording and we just had our new musician recordings. And at the end of the day, it was tons of stuff. Now, I had the benefit of Adam and Kristen assigning who was getting what lines. They had an Excel spreadsheet and they had emails drafted that went out to like 80 people, and everyone had their line that they were singing with explicit instructions of a track to listen to and how to hold their camera. They were very explicit about a lot of this stuff.
There comes a time when we heed a certain call, and the world must come together as one, yeah.
And also Adam edited the video of it so that for the lead vocals, I received stuff that was already at least in the timeline.
The greatest gift of all.
But for the chorus parts, it was just some people, singing into their phones, the chorus part, and I had to place them together and just make sure that that choir lined up together, but not in a way that sounded robotic. Sorry, guys. But in a way that sounded like 25 or 30 people who were well rehearsed, but singing together live in the same space.
We are the world. We are the children.
Remember, there's a whole choir that sings We Are the World together. So that entire choir was recorded individually at home by people.
We're saving our own lives. It's true, we make a better day, just you and me.
Most of the video was done on, iPhone recordings, cell phone recordings. Most of the audio was the audio from those phone recordings as well. Some of the singers had access to some recording stuff at home, and you see some of that in the video playback as well. So those made my life a little easier to deal with.
There's a choice we're making. We're saving our own lives. It's true, we make a better day, just you and me.
It was an incredible challenge. It was incredibly fulfilling and amazingly fun to work on this project with Adam and Kristen and the whole group of musicians.
And just a few people have viewed it since it debuted.
It's about to hit 3 million views, which is just mind-boggling.
It's true, we make a better day, just you and me.
And We Are the World was not the only virtual project that you got to work on with Adam. I guess the other one could be considered a bit of a dream come true for you.
An opportunity popped up that was, as you say, a dream come true. Now, Kevin and I are just going to reminisce for a second. When we were in college, we were fans of the funk band Tower of Power. If you know them, obviously you know how incredible they are. If you don't know them, you have heard the Tower of Power horn section on numerous hit songs, just didn't realize it. And we would go see what I used to refer to as the Tower of Power farm team, a band called the Funk Philharmonic. The Funk Philharmonic would play on Long Island. It was a bunch of Long Island musicians who played not only a very similar style of music, but I mean, it had 85% of the repertoire had to be Tower of Power songs.
Yeah,
They're an incredible band. I think they still play to this day.
they do.
And when I call them a farm team, that's because literally Tower of Power has reached down and said, hey, we need a singer or we need a sax player. They were aware of this band and they pulled some folks out of this band to bring with them in the major league version of the band. Two of the previous Tower of Power singers are New York folks, Tom Bowes and Brent Carter. And my good friend Adam Seeley has had occasion to know both of these and meet both of these gentlemen. Kristen Seeley has played with Tom Bowes in the same band. I think in the We Are the World video, we had the opportunity to invite Tom Bowes and Brent Carter to participate in that project. And they said yes, which was wonderful. And while we were just at the beginning of piecing that together, Brent Carter asked Adam, hey, I'm thinking about doing one of these myself. Would you like to work on that? And Adam immediately said yes. And he smartly said, I got to use my audio guy, though, which was really nice of him. And so that's how I got involved.
Ray Green, Larry Bragg.
Brent Carter reached out to 5 other former lead singers of Tower of Power and asked them to join him in one of these quarantine videos of doing Tower of Power's song, What Is Hip?
So you wanted to bounce your trick back and ease on into hip bang, but you ain't just exactly sure what's hip.
And the audio on a lot of these, again, was just the phone audio. And I was tasked with mixing a version of What Is Hip with these 6 incredible, legendary Tower of Power vocalists. joining forces on this song.
Does anybody know what hip is? Hey, Brick. What? Ellis. Hi. Wait a minute.
The link is below. Please click it and check it out.
Hipness is what it is. Hipness is what it is. Hipness is.
It was exhausting, and it was the most fun exhaustion I've ever had.
Sometimes hypnosis is what it ain't. Yeah.
We were trying to get this We Are the World video done for the 80 people that were involved in that. And at the same time, we were working on the What is Hip video.
What is hip? Have mercy.
You know, in this series, I've been trying to draw attention to some of the positives that have happened during the pandemic. Have there been any silver linings for you?
For me personally, it would be early on in what was happening. I had this opportunity to do these videos, and it was hugely creatively rewarding, while at the same time, it gave me the opportunity to not be quite as isolated by being stuck at home. I was in constant contact with one of my very best friends. To have this friendship with Adam blossom past what it ever had been in previous years. We spent more time texting and talking on the phone and via video. We spent more time together than we ever did in person over the last several years. So that's just been a true blessing.
Now, assuming we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel on this, and it's not an oncoming train, what's next for Wind Up Shop?
There's a few folks that I'm talking to right now who have some projects coming up. So I'm looking forward to mixing, which should be great. I'm actually doing a little bit more audio for video, which is great. I've just recently completed something that could best be described as a short documentary, working with the dialogue and some sound design and actually scoring the music for it.
And what's next for the two bands?
Catherine Miles and Jay Mafale will be releasing our new record this year. I suspect there's a link below to our website. And as far as No Fuss and Feathers is concerned, we are supposed to be headlining a festival in October if things are opened up. It's something that got postponed from last March, but those definitely going to be more touring. I know everyone's been writing more music, so I'm hopeful maybe we can convince everybody to get another record out in the next year or so.
Dude, thanks so much for, taking all this time and, sitting down to chat with an old friend and telling me all that you got going on.
Kevin, seriously, thank you so much for inviting me. It was an absolute honor and a privilege. I can't wait to see how this show and maybe any others that you are producing just blossom, because I love what you're doing. And I hope that we get to do something like this again. It'd be an absolute gas.
Excellent. Have a great night, and I'll speak with you soon. If you'd like to learn more about the Wind Up Shop, Miles and Mafale, and No Fuss and Feathers, you can check out their websites. The links are in the video's descriptions. I'd also like to thank all of the artists who are kind enough to lend music for the making of this episode. And while the series is focused mainly on the drinks and hospitality industries, musicians around the world have been affected by the pandemic and continue to be so. If you get a moment, please watch a virtual performance by an artist and help musicians where you can. And as always, if you've liked this episode or any of the others of No Pants during the pandemic, please share the video and like my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
I close my eyes, I am far out on the water. All these questions I have carried, I cast over the waves. I'll let them go, the slow